Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
He needs care and treatment.
You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May Remax Partners on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Is this a great country or what?
Locking down the middle of the day, live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Tuesday. It means we're brought to you by Daryl May of Remax Partners. Jordan Kitchens, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Fired up, you're here with us. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Glen West with us in 30 minutes talking Tigers. We'll have Colin Jeter at the top of hour number 2. Sharif Ishak talking Saints at 2:30. I've got some statistics to dive into with LSU basketball that I want to get into. Can the Saints finish this thing out strong over the last 3 games of the season? We'll get into a little bit of that. And I got a question on Twitter earlier today when I was soliciting questions for a mailbag for LouisianaSports.net. 5 best baseball players I've seen play at LSU. We'll get into that at the end of the hour. It's a little bit of a filler topic, but let's be honest, this time of year, there is a little bit of filler to be applied at this point. There is not a ton going on with LSU football at this very moment. There is not anything going on with LSU basketball until Friday. Baseball is gone. You got women's basketball playing today at 11 o'clock. They were 72.5-point favorites today. Yes, that's correct, 72.5-point favorites today. They were up 52-17 at halftime. So there's a little bit of a lull in activity on the field, on the court at this point. So if we need to sneak in 10 minutes on the 5 best baseball players I've seen at LSU, we can do that at the end of this hour, as we will now do every single day. Let's crank things up with our Fabry Chevrolet GMC opening drive.
Welcome to the big league.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Fabry Chevrolet GMC in St. Francisville.
Look, Lane Kiffin's got his feet on the ground here in Baton Rouge. The early signing period is over. Most of his staff is put together. It's not complete, but most of it is put together. LSU has got a bowl game to prepare for that they'll play in 11 days. Lane Kiffin is not intimately involved in that. So next up is essentially all eyes on the transfer portal. In the first place, everyone is going to look in the transfer portal is Oxford, Mississippi, where Lane Kiffin has a lot of players he recruited to Ole Miss that could potentially go in the transfer portal. That's not to single out Ole Miss. Everybody has got players that can go in the transfer portal. But generally speaking, when head coaches move job to job, some players follow. That's just the nature of how things go. The 2 guys that are garnering the most attention in internet land are Trinidad Chambliss, the quarterback, and Kewan Lacy, the running back. They are kind of the 2 headliners from this Ole Miss team. And so the question has to be asked, potentially, could they end up in Baton Rouge? And we're going to play some bites from Lacy and Chambliss yesterday. And I want you to keep in mind as you're listening to this, if that's how you're consuming this. If you're watching, you'll see it. But if you're listening to this press conference is being conducted in front of a college football playoff logoed backdrop. This is in preparation for the biggest game in the history of Mississippi football. Not the school, the state. There's never been a playoff game in the state of Mississippi. These teams haven't competed for a national championship in decades and decades and decades. And while this game is coming up 5 days away, Lacy and Chambliss are taking questions like this. It's not an ideal situation for the sport of college football, but it is of interest to us down here in Baton Rouge, so we're going to hear from it. You'll get the questions that are included here in these bites, but this is Kewan Lacy, who's had a monster season for Ole Miss, talking about potentially following his coach. Now am I live? All right, now I'm up. All right, we didn't quite have that. Do we think we can get that tweaked out? Because these are bites that we really I think that they are very, very telling on both fronts with Lacy and Chambliss, and we've got them via YouTube. And it's an awkward spot for both guys to be in. And what's interesting is that both guys watched their head coach do this song and dance for 3 weeks in November. So there is precedent here for the same Ole Miss beat reporters kind of asking the same questions, albeit to people in different positions. Lane Kiffin under contract at Ole Miss, theoretically going to a rival. Everyone understands that these guys could potentially be free agents. So we'll try this again. This is Kewan Lacy talking about following Lane Kiffin potentially to LSU.
Kewan, so there was a video leaked out, some audio of Lane talking about you specifically, how you going to follow him to LSU. When you saw that come out, what was your response to it?
It was just a surprise. I just been keeping my mindset on just trying to go 1-0 and focus on the run we're having right now. So I don't get into all of that.
That's basically what you heard from Lane Kiffin. Like, just trying to go 1-0. We're not going to talk about that. We're just going to keep things locked in with what we're doing here at Ole Miss. Like, just not elaborating, not going to talk about those types of things. And so what is another piece to this puzzle is that Kewan Lacy, who transferred in to Ole Miss, is working under position coach Kevin Smith. And Kevin Smith is the other person named in that video that they're referencing, where it's Lane Kiffin talking on speakerphone to his kids saying that Kewan Lacy and Kevin Smith are both going to end up at LSU. And there's been a lot of drama whether or not Lane Kiffin's going to keep Frank Wilson on staff as running backs coach, or whether or not he's going to bring Kevin Smith with him. And so the question was posed to Kewan Lacy, like, about his relationship with Kevin Smith and what that may mean for his future.
You mentioned still having your coach here. Not everyone can I guess say that. So how beneficial is that for you during this stretch?
It's very beneficial. I feel like, we break down film, go over our footwork and everything. So just having that structure still is important.
What's been your relationship like with Kevin Smith since the recruiting process through now? And how has it grown even?
It's been great. He's a great teacher, so I feel like I learn a lot from him each day. Like, there's never a day where I don't learn anything in the meeting room. So
I think it's likely that Kewan Lacy and Kevin Smith are together next football season. I think it's possible that's in Oxford. I listened to Neil McCready and Chase Parham today. They seem to think that it's likely those two will be in Baton Rouge next year. And interestingly, that Frank Wilson will be in Oxford. That's kind of the scuttlebutt at this point. We're not going to learn anything about that, I don't believe, until Ole Miss's season and LSU season are done. Frank Wilson's not going to talk about Ole Miss while he's coaching LSU. Kevin Smith and Kewan Lacy aren't going to talk about LSU while they're playing for Ole Miss. That's just going to be something that's kicked down the road until those two games, and potentially more for Ole Miss, are come to their resolution. But it feels like there's a strong possibility that Kewan Lacy and Kevin Smith are both in Baton Rouge next year. Now, the question on the next side comes with Trinidad Chambliss, the quarterback. Now, his situation is a little more complicated because Chambliss is appealing for an extra year. He's essentially looking for a medical back when he was at Ferris State that doesn't have a lot of documentation, is what a lot of folks on the Ole Miss side of thing are reporting once that appeal was made. But he answered some questions, kind of, about first waiting on that waiver.
On the waiver deal, like, is it, I don't know, how tough is that to just put it in the Lord's hands when, I mean, quarterbacks who get Heisman votes, like, they generally get life-changing money. Like, that waiver, I imagine, means a lot to you.
Yeah, definitely. Plus, I feel like it would be great for another year to, develop in college football. I obviously was playing D2 ball a lot of my college career. So, transitioning to the NFL, playing in another conference like the SEC would, benefit me for the next level. And it is kind of tough. It's been kind of stressing me out recently, but, I just got to put it in God's parking lot, really.
So he's telling you there, I want to play college football again. The development, obviously huge. College quarterbacks make a lot of money, and that's a big deal. And I think that question was very well asked, and I thought it was very well answered by Trinidad Chambliss. But then the next question comes, and it's okay, if it does get approved, like, then what?
Trinidad, if you do get that waiver, would you anticipate, if it's college, being at Ole Miss, or would you have to consider everything? Because that's part of it. It's all year to year. So what would be your considerations in that way?
Yeah, no, definitely. You hit it right on the nail. I would have to consider, like, what the best situation is for me, what I feel most comfortable with, who I trust the most, and just get a feel for, every possibility, really. So there's a lot that goes into that.
I'll just read the room there. Like, that sounds like a guy who wants to play for Lane Kiffin, who I trust, what situation. I mean, he was asked if he would plan to play that at Ole Miss, where he is currently the quarterback in the playoffs with Ole Miss on his shirt. And his answer did not mention Ole Miss once. And I mean, we did this whole song and dance with Lane Kiffin about how I told you, like, he's simply not answering the question. He won't answer the question. If he could answer the question in a way that was positive for Ole Miss, where he's currently employed and on a generational, quite literally generational run, like, he would do that. But he didn't want to because he knew the answer wasn't positive for Ole Miss. And that's just where it feels with Trinidad Chambliss as well. If you're a fan, you would love to hear Trinidad Chambliss, a fan of Ole Miss, say, Ole Miss is home. Like, this is where I feel like I got an opportunity to play at the highest level in college football. It's been a dream to be here and to play for the Ole Miss Rebels and to be in this town and to be in that stadium and represent the state and our fans the way that we have. It's just been a dream, and I certainly hope that I can do it again. But there's just nothing to that effect whatsoever in that answer. All you get in that answer is, got to look at my situation, got to look at my options, and see who I trust. And if the reports are correct, and I think there's been a lot of potential embellishment with a lot of things over the last 6 weeks. You hear reports that Trinidad Chambliss was the only player that went to bat for Lane Kiffin when Lane wanted to be the coach for Ole Miss in the playoffs. I don't know if that's true or not. I wasn't there. But if that's the case, like, okay. Like, it makes a lot of sense that he would follow Lane Kiffin to LSU. The question becomes for LSU, like, does he get eligible? Does he enter the portal? And then who else is in the portal? And based on time frame, do you want to get left holding the bag if Trinidad Chambliss doesn't get that waiver but does play into the semifinals, and then you've lost all the other quarterbacks you were pursuing into the transfer portal? They've gone elsewhere because you were waiting on Trinidad Chambliss, and then he's not eligible. There are going to be some things to juggle for Lane Kiffin if he does go into the transfer portal. But this is just, I want to be very clear at the end of this segment. Very clear. This is my opinion. This is not based in any sourcing or any fact whatsoever. My opinion, listening to these two players talk and knowing the dynamics at play in college football. My opinion is it feels very possible that in the next 3 weeks, Kevin Smith is LSU's running backs coach, Trinidad Chambliss is LSU's quarterback, and Kewan Lacy is at LSU playing running back. It feels very possible that that's the case. Now, what does that mean for Frank Wilson? I think it probably means he's at Ole Miss. What does that mean for Harlem Berry? I don't know. What does that mean for Caden Durham? I don't know. Do I feel confident that Trinidad Chambliss is going to get that waiver? I never know with the NCAA. Diego Pavia seems like I have to play, and TJ Finley get to play as long as they want, it seems. So I don't know. But listening to those answers, where neither Trinidad Chambliss nor Kewan Lacy ever mentioned Ole Miss or playing for the Rebels or wanting to be back next year, or anything of that nature when asked these questions, is indicative to me that they've got their eyes elsewhere with their former head coach. My opinion, my guess. Will it come to fruition? I guess that's what the next 3 weeks are for. And that's kind of what we're going to do now, is sit on our hands and wait till the transfer portal opens, and there's going to be just a flood of activity into and out of LSU, I think, and that will shape what this 2026 LSU football team will look like in year one under Lane Kiffin. Will it feature Kewan Lacy and Trinidad Chambliss? I guess we'll just have to find out. That is our opening drive. Let's step aside when we come back. Saints, can they turn a corner here?
The Hunt Palmer Show.
First American Bank and Trust. First American Bank and Trust. You're talking about a community bank that's been in our communities and here in Southeast Louisiana for 115 years. One thing that stood out to me when I was speaking with the folks over at First American Bank and Trust is that the management at their branches, the average is about 25 years with the bank. It's because they've cultivated such an amazing community, and they've got such a community feel, both with their clients and within their structure. And you understand that when you do business with them, whether you're looking for a residential loan or a commercial loan, you're dealing with people from your community. When you call them, you're getting someone in Southeast Louisiana. You're not getting a call center in Atlanta or San Francisco. You're not getting the runaround or dealing with machines. You're dealing with people right here in South Louisiana. And you're thinking, oh, well, that sounds great. It's community service. That's one thing that's great. But when I deal with this national bank, you're talking about significant resources that I need. Well, they've got that at First American Bank and Trust. You're talking about 25 locations, okay? They got plenty of assets. And they're happy to help you live your dream, whether it's a commercial loan or residential loan to buy that home. It's First American Bank and Trust, 25 locations throughout Southeast Louisiana, 115 years here. They'll be here for another 115. We believe it's First American Bank and Trust, First American Bank and Trust.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May Remax Partners. Looking for land to hunt or build? Call Daryl May Remax Partners.
Back here on this Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May of Remax Partners. We'll chat with Glen West coming up here in about 10 minutes from now. I'm going to be honest. This has a lot to do with the result of the game on Sunday. A lot to do with the result of the last two Saints games. I'm going to sip a little bit of Kool-Aid today. Allow me to. It's a Tuesday. They don't play again for a while. They've won 2 games in a row. It's been a long 2 years. I'm going to sip a little bit of Kool-Aid here. We talked about Tyler Shuck and the New Orleans Saints yesterday and how he was making winning plays. And it's not a work of art, but he's also just doing some really good things, getting the ball down the field, making winning plays in clutch moments, showing his athleticism, using his legs, avoiding big mistakes and big turnovers. And Shuck is a huge piece to this puzzle. He's the biggest piece on the field to this puzzle, and he's going to get a lot of analysis in the next 3 weeks as to where the direction of this franchise is headed. But right now, if you had to wager, you would have to wager that Shuck has played himself into being the Saints quarterback next year, and the Saints not selecting a quarterback in the first round of this draft. I think that's fair to say. So you start to look away from that big, huge talking point, because there's a world where Tyler Shuck could have turned the ball over 14 times over the last 7 weeks, and the Saints gone 1-6, and Tyler Shuck proved himself as a rookie to be unfit for NFL play. Like, that happens to a lot of quarterbacks, especially guys that aren't taken in the first round. And at that point, you would have had to look very, very closely at quarterbacks if you were picked first, second, third in the draft. Absolutely. But he's playing himself to a spot where that's out of the discussion. So I start to look elsewhere on this roster, and one of the things that we harped on in the spring was just how important this Saints draft class was. And who was the first player they took in this draft class? Well, it's Kelvin Banks. And Kelvin Banks, in the first 6 weeks of the season, per Pro Football Focus, playing left tackle as a rookie, averaged a grade of 61.9, which is not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. It's about what you would expect from a rookie left tackle in the NFL. But what have you seen from him of late? Well, if you look back since week 9, he's only got one grade lower than that 61.9 he averaged through the first 6-7 weeks of the season. At LA, against one of the best fronts in the NFL, 73 grade offensively, run blocking 84.4 in that game. I'm not going to go through grade by grade by grade because numbers don't play great, but you understand, like, 84.4 is elite stuff, and that's a great front in LA. And he continued to build on that. Against Carolina, his grade was 72.1. And his pass blocking was 87.8. His grades against Atlanta Miami, Tampa, Carolina. 4 weeks in a row, the last 4 weeks. 74.5, really good. 58, that's the 1 week he was below that first 6-week average recently. But then in week 14, 79.9, had an 80 run blocking grade and almost an 80 overall grade. And then last week, 76.5 against Carolina. His pass blocking grade was 81.3. His run blocking was 78.0. I know that's a lot of numbers, and I apologize, but you're catching the drift. All these grades are somewhere between 78 and 84. This is big-time stuff that you're seeing toward the back half of his rookie season. He is proving his worth as a left tackle in the National Football League. Massive to get that kind of production. Shuck was next in that draft class, obviously. But you're seeing some of the other guys from that draft class play well. Quincy Riley has not been to the level of Kelvin Banks from a PFF grade standpoint, but keep in mind, Kelvin Banks was a top 10 pick. You took Quincy Riley in the middle rounds, and you're seeing him make some plays. It's not all perfect. He got beat for a touchdown on Sunday. I got it. Like, it's not every play is great, but he's around the football. He's been involved in some turnovers. One of the things that I want to see from somebody at that position at safety, I want to see someone who shows up on the screen, who comes down and makes some hits around the line of scrimmage, who is making tackles in the secondary, who is getting his hands on some football, knocking the ball away, deflecting some passes. And he is doing some of those things. He is performing above a level that you would expect from a mid-round pick rookie. He's a fourth-rounder. Your hit rate on fourth-round picks is not great, just league-wide. And the Saints' middle-round picks have really not been great of late. But Riley looks like he might be a hit. And then you look at Devin Neal, who has made some plays when given the opportunity now with Alvin Kamara down. And that's another mid-round pick. And if you think that this is the baseline for these guys, if what you're getting out of Kelvin Banks and Tyler Shuck and Quincy Riley and Devin Neal is their baseline, well, all of a sudden, you've got, in 3 of those cases, definitely starting players. I wouldn't put Devin Neal right there just yet, but in 3 cases, starting players from that draft class. And I told you needed 4. And Jonas Sanker is, with Riley on the corner, Sanker at safety, he's showing himself to be around the ball. He's showing himself to be a serviceable player at this point. That would be your 4th guy, and we haven't even gotten to Danny Stutzman yet, who's really not able to play as many snaps as he might as the other guys are because you've got Warner and Davis in front of him. But what you've got here is an opportunity. And it's just that. It's an opportunity. It's not a certainty. It's an opportunity for these last 3 weeks to transform the energy around this franchise. If you can win at least 2 of these last 3, and you would imagine those need to be against the Jets and the Titans. If you win those 2 have won 4 games in a row, with Atlanta coming at the end, and you can find a way to win that, with Shutt playing the way that he is, and rookies in your draft class playing the way that they may, all of a sudden, this 2-year malaise turns into some real positive juice. Now, they got to go do it. Like, Shutt can't go throw 4 picks on Sunday. You don't need to lose to the Jets or the Titans. But it's right there. Like, the wins the last 2 weeks have created a possibility where New Orleans can kind of reshape what the fan base really thinks of. I saw power rankings today that had the Saints at 25th. Now, that's not great, but considering if I rewound 3 weeks, they were probably 30th, 29th, 31st. You're moving in the right direction. And if you win 4 games in a row, 5 games in a row to close the season, I realize I'm reaching. I told you at the front of the segment I was reaching. But it's not that crazy. All of a sudden, with the way this division looks right now, positivity is not that outlandish. Positivity was pretty damn outlandish 5-6 weeks ago. You had no real reason to feel great about the quarterback spot, no real reason to feel great about the young talent on this team. And oh, by the way, I looked at the salary cap situation, and it stinks for this offseason. It's bad. You got massive dead money from Carr, and you've got we're way over the cap again. But you go from 30th to 17th if you click ahead to 2027. Now, 17th is not great, but it's an indication of where the books are going. And the Saints haven't been 17th in available cap space in 2 decades. So again, I'm reaching for some real positives here, but they're not completely outlandish. It starts with Shuck. It continues with Banks and Sanker and Riley and Neal. And it trickles over to Kellen Moore. And then you're one draft class away with all that massive old money coming off the books in a year and a half to being able to breathe. It's like the Shawshank Redemption when he comes out in the rainstorm. Things were in a real tough spot a month and a half ago, and they're still not fixed by any stretch of the imagination. And we know how most people, myself included, feel about Mickey Loomis, and we know that you're 2 awful weeks away from us completely throwing dirt on this whole thing again. But on this Tuesday, while they've won 2 games in a row, and you got 2 winnable games coming up, and Tyler Shuck's playing very well, and I'm watching Dan Orlovsky break down tape of how well Tyler Shuck is playing, I'm going to drink a little bit of Kool-Aid on this Tuesday before we get ready for Sunday's game. And it feels like you can see a little bit of light in what is a long, dark tunnel. Now, it can get cloudy again. We know that. But I feel like there is some reason with the way this young draft class is playing and now with winning some games led by the quarterback that you could have something. You could. It's not out of the question. We'll leave it at that. We'll come back with Glen West talking Tigers next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. SwingEasyGCBR.com is the website. They are on Segan at Perkins. Looking to work on your game in the winter, that's hard. Driving range doesn't have a lot of grass on it because the grass doesn't grow in the winter. It's cold. It gets dark early. Sometimes it rains. The rain doesn't dry up. It gets sloppy. It's just not a great environment to work on your golf game in the winter. But Swing Easy Golf Club provides that. It's climate controlled. It's inside. You work on the simulator. I'm telling you, this technology they've got on the simulator is accurate. You can see your ball flight. You can see how far you're carrying the ball. You can hit drivers and wedges. You can see what your club face is doing at impact with their slow-mo impact camera. You can see how your ball is responding, whether it's hooking, drawing, fading, slicing. And you can keep working on your game in a climate-controlled area, whether it's morning, afternoon, night, light, dark, cold, warm. You can do it over at Swing Easy Golf Club. They're on Segan at Perkins. You can find them online at swingeasygcbr.com. Swing Easy Golf Club.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May Remax Partners. Looking for land to hunt or build? Call Daryl May Remax Partners.
Tuesday show is brought to you by Daryl May, licensed realtor in Louisiana and Mississippi. Looking to buy, sell a home here in Baton Rouge? Contact my guy, Daryl May with Remax Partners, DarylMayProperties.com, DarylMayProperties.com. Glen West, senior writer, Go 24/7. Good enough to give us a little bit of time here on this Tuesday, as he does every single week. Glen, how are you?
I'm doing well, Hunt. How about yourself?
I'm all right. I know a lot of buzz is on the internet about LSU and what they do at quarterback moving forward. A lot of quarterbacks making their intentions known that they're going to head into the transfer portal. Any of that catching your eye?
Yeah, I think a couple of them are really interesting. I think Moresby is a really interesting prospect. I think DJ Lagway is a really interesting possibility. I think, honestly, the best possibility for me, though, is just the guys that maybe haven't entered yet, but I could see entering. I think Sam Levet is certainly an interesting option. Somebody from who, from all accounts, is going to enter the portal. Fits kind of that Lane Kiffin mold of a quarterback that can move his legs a little bit and kind of fits that system. And the only downside with him is that he could potentially be missing some time, due to his Liz Frank injury that he's coming back from. But I really like the idea of Sam Levet potentially being an option for Lane Kiffin and LSU. And then Trinidad Chambliss. If Chambliss is able to get that waiver, I think that makes all the sense in the world. If he were to enter the portal, then LSU would be all over him as a potential, kind of 1 year stopgap between what you hope is, a long-term future option that you're also able to find in the portal as well. So those are just a couple of the guys that I think, seem interesting to me. But Levet and Chambliss, I think, would be my ideal scenarios for LSU.
It's hard for me to envision a situation where LSU has adequate bodies at quarterback next year. I think that would involve Michael Van Buren staying and adding 2 veteran quarterbacks, which just seems hard to do. I know money talks, but how do you feel like Lane Kiffin handles that situation in January?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that it certainly hinges on, LSU feeling comfortable at the quarterback position. We'll have to include Michael Van Buren on the roster. I think. I don't think you can completely overhaul this quarterback room with 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the cycle in January, February. But I think if you're able to go out there and you're able to find a 1-year starter, you're able to make that pitch that, okay, we have this 1-year kind of stopgap, and then you can tell Van Buren, you can tell another young quarterback that maybe you bring in that, hey, you can be competing for the starting job the next year. I don't know. We'll see if that's something that, Van Buren and quarterback portal young player X are willing to listen to. But I do think that that's kind of the situation that LSU is going to have to find itself in here. I mean, obviously you've got a young quarterback committed in Peyton Houston in 2027. That's still a year away. But I do think that the best option for LSU is to kind of find a short-term answer for 2026 that can run the Kiffin offense. And then going out and finding another young player that maybe has a little bit of experience or maybe has the high-end potential that you're looking for at the position that has several years of eligibility, and then you make that pitch to him that you can come in and you can compete for playing time, but also have an opportunity there in 2027 to really win that job.
Let's talk about this roster as it's constituted for the next 2 weeks. It feels like we kind of have a basic idea of who's going to play and who's not in the Texas Bowl. What does that suggest to you based on what you've heard about who intends to potentially be back next year?
Yeah, I think on defense in particular, there's not going to be as many portal entries as you might think. And I think that it has a lot to do with the fact that Blake Baker and a lot of this defensive staff were retained. And I think that's a really good thing for LSU because the one thing you don't want to have to do is have to completely overhaul this defense, right? You feel good about some of the returning pieces like DJ Pickett and PJ Woodland, perhaps a Gabriel Relaford if he comes off that injury and is able to come back, to strong to form. I think Whit Weeks is a very interesting question as to whether or not you can get him back for a senior year. So you have some foundational pieces on defense that make you think that, hey, you can really build something solid here with some extra portal entries or extra portal additions without losing too much on that side of the ball. I think offense is where it gets tricky because I do think that there are only a handful of players that, if I'm Lane Kiffin and I'm this new offensive staff, that I'm really beating down the door to get back. I think Harlan Berry and Trey'Dez Green are right at the top of the list, and certainly several of the offensive linemen. I think Carius Kern, Solomon Thomas, Tyree Adams, those would be guys that I would be really trying to convince to get back into the program. Braylon Moore maybe is another one who's draft eligible that I think, a year of health and another offensive line coach and a more development could really help him. I think that LSU's in a weird position there just because I do think that there are going to be a lot of entries from the offensive side of the ball. But that's also where you're expecting to do most of your damage in the portal as well. So I do think that there are going to be some players that elect to play in this game that do enter the portal. We've already seen a couple who have announced, Ahmad Bro, Juwan Johnson, but they are going to be playing in the bowl game. And maybe those decisions here over the next couple of weeks are still a little bit undecided. Maybe the defensive staff can get in Bro's ear a little bit more. Maybe Lane Kiffin, can watch a couple of these practices and get into Juwan Johnson's ear a little bit more about potentially not entering the portal. So I don't think it's going to be a situation where 4 years ago, Brian Kelly was, hired and there was only 38 players on the roster. I do think that they're going to be able to retain, a good portion of this roster and then supplement through the portal where they need to at spots of need.
What does your gut tell you about Frank Wilson's future?
My gut says that Frank will not be back. I think that's kind of my opinion right now. I think that can certainly change after the bowl game, depending on what situations develop. Obviously, Kevin Smith is the big one to watch over in Oxford if LSU and Lane Kiffin are able to convince him to come over when Ole Miss is done with their playoff run. But look, I think if Lane Kiffin really wanted Frank Wilson to be the running backs coach, that announcement would have already been made. And I think there's, just a lot of unclarity right now, uncertainty around Frank Wilson and his future here. I would certainly love to have Frank back. I think what he does for recruiting is, immensely valuable. But at the same time, I do think LSU is going to be able to recruit Louisiana. They're going to be able to recruit New Orleans. They're going to be able to recruit really high-end talent because of the offensive scheme and the mind that Lane Kiffin is, and certainly what he's built through offensively throughout his career.
Let's switch over to basketball here while I got you. You were in the Smoothie King Center on Saturday. What'd you think?
This is the blueprint for how they can have some success. And I don't mean in the way that they shot the ball. When you shoot 62% from the floor and over 45% from three, chances are you're going to win games. I think it's the way that they were able to do that really stood out to me. They did a really nice job, I think, turning their defense into offense. They didn't put themselves in very many precarious situations with bad shots on the offensive side of the ball. They played with pace. They played fast. They played free. And I thought that they did a really nice job, especially De'Don Thomas, orchestrating the offense. I thought when Michael Nwoko and Robert Miller got into some early foul trouble, the performances you saw from Markel Sutton and Pablo Tamba were really important on both ends of the floor. They did a nice job of controlling the paint in that game. And then the big thing, though, is that they got some threes to fall. And if LSU is going to want to be a successful offense in SEC play, they're going to have some shooters step up, and it can't just be Max McKinnon. McKinnon's been a little bit of a streaky shooter for LSU this year, but they have to find some other complementary outside shooters that can help really open the floor, because this is going to be, at the end of the day, I think, an inside-out offense, an offense that wants to convert points in the paint, get to the free throw line, and shoot at a high percentage there. And the only way to do that is to get, teams from packing the paint on you by hitting shots on the outside. And you saw in the Texas Tech game, they didn't think LSU was a threat on the outside, and they packed the paint, and it affected LSU's performance on the inside. I think LSU being able to shoot the ball, and particularly McKinnon being able to shoot the ball from the outside, really helped LSU in that game on Saturday. And that's the blueprint for how they're going to have to win games in the conference as well.
What's your gut tell you? You look at this team; they're probably going to be 12-1 entering SEC play. How do you feel about their prospects when they get there?
Yeah, look, I think that they're going to play Southeastern, Prairie View, and Southern Miss here over the next couple weeks. I think those are three pretty shoe-in games that you should be able to win. And I actually think that the early start to their conference schedule is doable. They play at Texas A&M, they play at Vanderbilt, but they get South Carolina at home. They get Kentucky at home. That's going to be a tough one, although Kentucky has not really played to the level I think many people thought they would at this point in the year. But it really kind of gets hard for LSU down the stretch, in February and March. I do think January is a little bit more they can navigate it a little bit better. But I do think that early 5-game stretch there is going to really tell us a lot about how competitive LSU can be in the conference, because I do think it's probably going to take 9 or 10 wins to get there, to be comfortable with being a tournament team, because the SEC just hasn't performed like it did last year in non-conference play. So there's a blueprint there. There's a path there. for this team to have some success, but you still want to see them in that first couple weeks stretch there be able to show that they can perform on the road and that they can take care of business at home.
All right, Glenn, we'll preview the Texas Bowl coming up next week when we do this.
All right.
We'll talk
Thanks,
next
Hunt.
week. It's Glen West, senior writer, Go 24/7. Good enough to be with us on Tuesdays. Colin Jeter with us in 15 minutes. Step aside, come back and close out hour one next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Fabry Chevrolet GMC, Highway 61 in St. Francisville, now under new ownership. You know the Fabry name. They've been in business here in Baton Rouge 35 years. Got a huge inventory of new and pre-owned Chevrolets and GMC. So if this time of year you're looking for a new vehicle, which a lot of folks are, Chevy Tahoes, they got them. Chevy Silverados, they got them. On the GMC side, they got Sierras, Yukons, Denali's. Looking for an SUV or a truck, they've got you covered over at Fabry Chevrolet GMC. They've had a number of different locations in the Fabry family, but every time you visit one of them, you're going to get unbelievable customer service, and you're going to get that Highway 61 in St. Francisville when you go to Fabry Chevrolet GMC. You can check out the entire inventory at fabrychevrolet.com or make the short drive up to St. Francisville for an awesome amount of savings on a great line of vehicles. It's Fabry Chevrolet GMC. They're online at fabrychevrolet.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May Remax Partners. Looking for land to hunt or build? Call Daryl May Remax Partners.
All right, closing up hour number one here. Tuesday show is brought to you by Daryl May of Remax Partners. Daryl's got an amazing skill set in helping you buy and sell homes. He's been a builder in Baton Rouge for more than 20 years and understands what you want to be buying. So if you want a representative on the buy side, Daryl May is happy to help you. That also can help you with sales as well. He has an incredible wealth of knowledge from his time growing up in Baton Rouge, as well as the move out to St. Francisville. So if you're looking for homes just outside the city limits, he can help you with that and certainly knows Baton Rouge inside and out. You can find him at darylmayproperties.com. So with Remax Partners, brings you our Tuesday shows each and every week. So I'm looking at some of these point spreads. LSU was a 72.5-point favorite in their women's basketball game today. They were playing Morgan State, who entered the game 1-11. If you got some cash down on Morgan State today, you cashed that ticket because LSU only won the game by 58. So it was a rocking chair cover.
No, listen.
Rocking chair cover.
If you're putting any money on that spread, you need to call the hotline. I'm sorry. There's no way. 72-point spread?
Well, guess what? I got an opportunity for you tonight. 9 o'clock p.m., Big Ten Network. UCLA's laying 64.5 on Cal Poly.
Oh, my goodness.
64 and a hook. You can get down on that.
That's ridiculous. The fact that they're even predicting to lose by 70 points is just what is going on? I know it's levels.
There's some haves and have-nots in the world of women's basketball, and it happens. However, I am getting some video. That game's over. 91-33 was the final. There is video now that's on Twitter, and I got to be honest. I am 37 years old. I turn 38 next month. So the 6'7" thing, not something I pay attention to, and my kids are almost 4 and almost 1, so they don't know it either. So it's just it's not in my world.
Yes.
I'll tell you what. LSU scored their 67th point today in women's basketball in the PMAC.
Yeah.
It might have been it was like the earthquake game. It might have been a Richter scale inducing. The kids, and for those that don't know, LSU women's basketball plays one game every year in December at 11 o'clock in the morning during the week, and they bring thousands of kids in on school buses to watch the game, which I think is a really cool thing they do. The 67th point, it was thunderous in there.
Oh, yeah. You would have thought the president walked in or something like that. Nah.
I'm 100% positive this got a far bigger reaction than if any president in American history would have walked in.
Without a doubt.
You could have brought every living president in there at this point, and this would have gotten a bigger response. And the LSU women's basketball players were getting in on it. Kim Mulkey was getting in on it. It was a 67 fiesta in there for this for this bucket?
Well, I like it. I enjoy it. You know, Cassie's just a little, she doesn't like it too much.
It drives me nuts.
Yeah, she hates it.
It would probably drive me nuts if anyone in my life did it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't have it. It's not in my cousins are too old. My kids are too young. I'm too old. It's just not in the sphere.
Well,
but I'm aware
don't
of
speak
it.
too soon. Just
and I
speak
don't
too
understand what we're doing.
Don't
but
speak too soon.
it was, I mean, if you've got kids that are into the 6-7 thing, show them the LSU women's basketball Twitter page, because the bucket that they got, it was an and one, and the place just went bonkers. It's an indelible moment in LSU women's basketball history. The 67th point against Morgan State at noon on a Tuesday in December. Michaela Williams, 14 points for LSU as they win by 58. But Morgan State covers with ease. So if you got down on Morgan State, I don't even know what their mascot is. It looks like a bear of some sort. The Lady Bears. Lady Bears covered with ease. If you're interested in getting a lot of points, you like to get on the underdogs, you got time. You got till 9 o'clock tonight to get Cal Poly plus the 64.5 against UCLA. That's women's basketball update for the day. That's it for hour number 1 here on this Tuesday. If you missed any of the first hour, we talked some LSU football, talked about Trinidad, Chambliss, and Kewan, Lacy, their interviews yesterday getting ready for the playoff and whether or not they could be entering the transfer portal. I think their answers were loud, even though they didn't have a lot of substance to them. That's the substance. We also talked a little about the Saints. Are they finding a little bit of a corner to turn here? You can catch that at Hunt on Saints as well. We'll pause for SportsCenter for national headlines. When we come back, Colin Jeter of the Alumni Association, former tight end, will join us on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Marucci, Hitter's House in the rearview mirror, but that doesn't mean it's not an awesome time to get on by Marucci. You can get a campus tour. They're right here in Baton Rouge. Started in a backyard shed in 2004. Now you're talking about the bat, the official bat of Major League Baseball. So if you want to get on by and see the tour, you can do that. Every wooden bat Marucci makes is handcrafted in Baton Rouge. They make about 1,200 a day. If you want an individual tour, a family tour, want to bring the kiddos to see where the official bat of Major League Baseball is made, MarucciSports.com/campus-tour. And every ticket for the tour comes with a 20% discount over at Marucci. So go hit some balls in the cage. See where these unbelievable bats are made. It's a real gem here in Baton Rouge. It is Marucci. Check them out, MarucciSports.com/campus-tour. It's Marucci, where you can go on the campus tour.